In today's episode of the Par8o Presents podcast, I have an interesting guest here with me today. I'm with Hannah Kelley, and she's heading over as the Senior Director of Marketing at Par8o. And basically, today we're going to be learning much more about the product, the company, and how it's revolutionizing healthcare technology. There's exciting news for the company, interesting product, and Hannah, I want to learn more. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Very cool. Yeah, maybe give us first an overview, right? For everybody who hasn't heard about the company prior, like what's the product all about, and what does it do?
Sure. So Par8o is, as you mentioned, a healthcare technology company, and we started in the referral management space. So, everyone, when you go to your primary care doctor and they refer you to a specialist, there was a missing link there because the technology systems that your primary care office used and your specialist used didn't speak well to each other. So our first product, we built something that would basically bridge those two systems, which led us to our second product, which is our most successful. And the second product actually builds on that referral to help capture additional government funding for community health centers. And that funding is in turn used to provide services for the nation's uninsured and underinsured population who are most badly in need of those healthcare services. And then we launched a third product, which helps or aims to improve health equity in clinical research. So that same patient population that primarily seeks healthcare services at community health centers typically is not included in academic medical research because usually academic medical research is paired with larger hospital systems and things like that. So when you get to racial and ethnic minority groups, as we saw with the pandemic, it disproportionately affected African Americans. And at the same time, that population was not properly represented in clinical research. So Par8o said, we see this, we see that we have a footprint with that same patient population at the community health centers. Let's partner with these health centers and try to match them up with trials so that basically the outcoming therapies in medicine better serve everybody. And so that's our third and newest product, but the one we'll probably be focusing on today is our second one.
Interesting. Okay, so we got the three products and the approaches that you brought in. Maybe tell us a little bit more about specifically the companies or the centers that are leveraging the platform. Is that governmental clients? Is that businesses? Maybe tell us, and if businesses, which type of business, what size? Maybe give us a little bit more of an insight specifically for the ones that are not as familiar with the sector.
Yeah, absolutely. So for our first product named Care Compass, we sell that to businesses, large healthcare systems. So, think of big hospital systems that have 5 different hospitals in different locations. We're part of the technology that helps that all work. For our second product, our clients are primarily community health centers at this point. So they can be small, they can be 1 or 2, down the road health clinic locations, but they can also be fairly large. So some community health centers have 6, 7, 8 locations, if not more. And then you also, in that same space, you start to talk about a 340B covered entity. So it's not owned by the government, but they qualify for certain government grants based on the patient populations that they serve. So for example, in one of our newest markets that we're pushing into is the hospital market. So depending on, again, the patient population that the hospital serves, they'll earn 340B covered entity status and various designations. What that means is they qualify for this grant money under 340B. And they're also typically, they can be located in rural areas, things like that. And so then we're selling to those hospital systems. And obviously selling to large hospital systems is different than community health centers because once you're in bigger systems, then during the sales process, you have to go through security reviews and things like that. But so we vary from smaller organizations to larger, but ultimately the larger patient population they have, the more opportunity there probably is for us to capture just purely by the numbers that they're serving. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to help out or be useful for the smaller organizations as well. Since with our 340B product, we don't charge implementation, it's upside only, it's percentage based. So we're only charging what we capture for them.
That makes sense. Now, maybe tell us a little bit how these personas or these companies that you were describing actually do hear about Par8o? Like, what's sort of the typical client acquisition channels that you as a marketer sort of, are working on? Maybe if you give us an overview.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we started, we were actually the first to market with the 340B referral capture solution. Nobody else was doing what we did. So when you do that in a space, your first hurdle is really going to be getting people to trust it, right? Because I always compared it to when Apple came out with the iPad. How do you sell something to someone when they don't know what it is yet, So our strategy there was to show up at the industry conferences and really focus on providing a service to that space. So we commissioned a white paper because 340B is a very complicated space. It's regulated, it's government, and that's not an easy space for a new person on the job to come into. So we thought, why don't we put out a primer? Why don't we put out this is what 340B is, and start to get name recognition in the industry. Building on that name recognition, they'll then know our product and start to trust our brand. And then they'll be more likely to purchase from us or sign on as a client. So that's always been our strategy. It still is to this day. So we started at conferences. We also, at the same time, heavily invested in getting known with consultants in the industry because they have influence, and then partnering with various third-party administrators that will also have existing influence based on already having clients. So we heavily focus and support our channel partners as well. And I think all of those channels, all of those strategies coming together is really what got us to the place that we're in today.
Interesting. Now, what role do you think the website plays, in getting to know Par8o? We have a lot of, marketers coming to the show. The website plays a varying role in their thinking about their growth strategy. What's the role of the website in your perspective?
So it's an interesting question because obviously by now, if you put two and two together, we're heavily on the outbound side, right? Because you're not going to search for something that you don't know is available to you yet. That's just not how humans think and work. So with the website, it becomes, first of all, you can't be in today's world and not have a website that is your virtual business card, right? Like people are going to form opinions based on the website. So things like color and layout and technology and experience of the website, they're all so important. And then you can obviously get into all the automation behind that. You don't want anyone coming to the website, filling out a form, and then not hearing from your sales team for a week. Like that's not what you want. So as far as the website and the part it plays in the buyer's journey, there's always this part. Well, maybe not always, not everyone's a researcher. But myself as a buyer, if I was going to buy something, you always want to go dig and find what you can on your own, right? Because you know that a salesperson's job is to sell to you. You know that there might be other stuff out there on the internet you want to dig up about whatever you're thinking about. So always be findable. So the website, we want all of the information there. We also want to host things that they want to download. So we give, again, a little bit, we provide that service. We host quarterly educational webinars, all of that. So the website is, again, to increase trust in the brand and show them that we know what we're doing. Because I'm sure, just as a consumer yourself, if you go to a company's website and it doesn't represent them well, you automatically lose trust that I can see you nodding your head. Yeah, you automatically lose trust that they're a stand-up company, especially in the healthcare field, and technology. Your website really does have to represent your brand. From that, on the same token, in general web presence, you also have to be findable on search. So even though we're not heavily inbound, we still invest in making sure we have placement, because while when we came out with this product 4 or 5 years ago, we didn't have competitors, we do now. So, you want to make sure that you're, especially if you're first to market, that you're locking in that presence on the internet, that you're pushing blogs out, because Google absolutely loves seniority. So if if you know what you're doing in a space, you want to be putting content out about it, not because you're going to be page 1 next month, but because in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, you're going to be page 1 organically. And that's a marketer's dream, right? So that's always been part of the strategy, be findable, and then, choose your partnerships well, get on the websites of the organizations that are also helping your targets do their job. So anywhere that you can have your name out there that brings them to you, you want to have a big footprint ultimately.
Very cool. I want to switch gears slightly and talk with you a little bit about how you keep on educating yourself as a marketer, right? So there is so much content out there for marketers to dig into case studies, best practices, and the likes. Like, what's the places where you like to, read and educate yourself, with all the noise out there?
Oh, that's a really, really good question, because to be very blunt, there's a lot of not helpful content out there. Or people that are regurgitating other ideas that were plainly on another website. So you can waste a lot of time trying to educate yourself online. I will say that, and this I think was one of your questions that you might get to, we're a very big HubSpot shop. So I do trust HubSpot a lot for the content they put out. And I actually copied their strategy. We ended up as a HubSpot shop because I kept finding their content useful. So then what do? We bought HubSpot CRM and their platform and their, so we're a HubSpot shop. And we were like, that's brilliant. Let's just do that. Let's have people come to us, get really good quality content. So one thing that I personally hate is when people try to use the known marketing strategies of, okay, we need a blog because people need to find us. Let's put out 600 words about a thing that is kind of useful. Like, you're just throwing junk out onto the internet. Make sure it's good. And don't stuff your keywords, please, Lord. You can tell I'm an editor by nature, right? But so overall, wait, I lost track of the question. What was the question?
No, I think just where so you mentioned the HubSpot blog has been a great place of education. So it was about, the education where we keep on learning as a marketer. So HubSpot seems to be like a great inspiration.
Yeah, that one. And I'm always, marketing, one thing that's so interesting about marketing as a field is it's always developing. And it appeals to me a lot overall because one, of that nature, it's always developing. Two, there's always best practices in so many areas of marketing, whether you're specializing in SEO, web presence, inbound, whether you're specializing in video, whether you're, there's so many areas that you can really get into and own. And within those areas, even those are constantly developing. So for me personally, I've never aspired to know absolutely everything about everything, because otherwise you would just be constantly learning all day, every day, and not actually working at your job, right? Unless you're a consultant, in which case, power to you. But I think it's a balance between staying relevant, subscribing to things, using your best judgment. Does this apply to me? Does this apply to my market? Does this apply to my industry niche? Because a lot of things won't, and that's the truth. There's a lot of things I follow that, we're a B2B healthcare tech company with a niche product. There's not a lot of content out there on how to market to healthcare B2B. So I did go to an industry conference once in that space, but most of it, again, didn't apply because it was more so about marketing to patients, and I don't market to patients. I market to the decision makers at the hospitals. So it's really pick and choose and be thoughtful about where you're spending your time, and then know what works for your audience and your market segment, because a lot of it won't apply, unfortunately. So instant invaluable in this space.
Since we're slowly coming to an end of the interview, I would love to jump into our rapid fire questions. A couple of quick question and answers to get to know you and the company a little bit better. Are you ready for those?
Ready as I'll ever be, I guess.
What is the last book you read or the last podcast you listened to?
Oh man, that is a good question. The last book I read, I was at an airport. So I'm a parent of a 2-year-old, so there's not a lot of time for reading in my life right now. The last book I read, someone at the airport I was talking to, he worked for a different tech company. You can meet a lot of people at airport bars, and we had such a good marketing conversation. He sent me a book called Chief Marketing Officer. And so that was the last book I read.
Very cool. What's one single thing that your company is focused on the most at the moment?
We were just acquired by Cloudmed yesterday. We're actually now a Cloudmed company. So I can't say that we're Par8o at this point. We're still named Par8o, but we're Par8o, a Cloudmed company. So what are we focused on the most at this point is integrating those two companies, bringing all of these different systems together, figuring out what works best. One thing that I'll say has been really exciting and relieving to me, coming from the Par8o side, is that Cloudmed's being very, very thoughtful on how to not interrupt our process that we've built and obviously made very successful, but also how do we integrate it into the larger CloudMed company and the systems that they're already using, because they're much, much larger. We're about 30 people and they're 1,500. So that's what we're focusing on right now, is transitioning our brand over to CloudMed. There's different style guide, different brand guide, different approach, different products where we fit into their scheme. And we're also prepping for an upcoming conference. We're going to be at the 340B Coalition in San Diego. And we'll actually be coming out with a new booth that's co-branded with CloudMed and Par8o. So that'll be fun, or nice. It will be fun. It was kind of a fire drill for me, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
If there would be no boundaries in tech, right? Everything is possible. What's the one thing you would fix for your role today?
Ooh, good question. There were no boundaries in tech. What would I fix? So I was actually talking about this the other day with my team. I am one of those people that works with like 40 windows open. Mm-hmm. And so the thing that would help me out tremendously is if the internet browsers were smart enough to say, hey, you have this tab open in this tab already. Do you want to go there instead of opening it for the fourth time? So that would help my productivity immensely. Mm-hmm.
And the last question would be, right, if we are sort of doing a bit of time travel and we go back to the days of the University of Massachusetts Amherst, the question would be, now that you're heading out of sort of, public education, I would say, or formal education, which career advice would you give yourself? Like, you went a very interesting journey in your career, but what's the one advice you would give yourself for that journey?
Right. So that is an excellent question. So I majored in English and journalism. I've always been a reader, writer at heart, but I knew that there wouldn't necessarily be a great financial reward for that. So I wasn't sure where I was going to go. I never thought about marketing when I was younger. I would tell myself to think about marketing at that point, because it's a natural marriage. If you like language, if you like being persuasive, if you're an editor, if you like to always learn and be very important and have it be in an industry that's never going anywhere, like the world will always need marketing, always, then consider marketing. So I would tell myself to look at marketing and not be afraid of it. At that point in my life, I was definitely a lot shyer. I liked to be behind the scenes, and that is not at all my role today. So I kind of wish someone said, hey, if you like communications, why don't you think about marketing? I thought about PR, but I just never thought about marketing. I don't know why. Life just took me there.
Very interesting. I think it's actually a great message to a lot of people that are into content out there, that there's actually such a huge need, for content writing, copywriting. All of these is just even in the UX world, great need for that.
Yeah, so true. And that's actually part of my job was with Par8o, is I would help the product team. They'd always run their language by me, like, how do we make this more usable? And so part of my role is being able to switch lenses from who am I targeting with this messaging to being user-friendly, that type of stuff. So it's really cool. If you have a language background, if you're out there and you love to read and you're like, what am I going to do with this? You can absolutely do so many things, because language really is an art. I never understood that until recently. And if you can learn how to develop that skill and market your own skill, there's so much that you can do. People call it hand of magic at my company. They don't even know how to describe what I do. They just call it hand of magic. So yeah, if you like reading and you like writing, don't worry about it. There's so much that you can do, and every business needs it. Very
cool. And I really appreciate you took the time with us today to be guest on the Path on Crescent show. I want to give you the very last word. What is something somebody should be remembering if they forget everything else that we discussed about Par8o in this interview? What's the one thing they should, take away?
About marketing or the company?
Maybe about the company.
Okay. What they should remember about Par8o, now a CloudMed company, is that we are a tech company who really does what we say we do. Meaning there's a lot of tech companies out there that they are really good at selling what they do, and then people sign on and find out it's not it. We stand on integrity, and that's why we've earned the reputation that we have. So through and through, our clients are always super happy with the experience with us, again, which is why we've gone as far as we have. So Par8o is the real deal, and that's why we were acquired. We always have been told that we've punch above our weight class, as our CEO says. And that's why we're now a part of the Cloudvent family.
Thanks a lot for being a guest on Platform Presents.
Well, thanks for having me.